For the last 8 years, I have designed over 150 websites for personal brands, and I've spent over 1,000 hours studying the ones that actually work. Everything from coaches landing their first few paying clients all the way up to multi-7-figure businesses. So I've seen what the right website can do for your personal brand. One client got a 10 times return on investment within 1 month after launching his new site. Another doubled her monthly sales within just a few weeks of going live with her sales page. But most people don't even really think about their website when they're building their personal brand. They pour everything into socials, they post more, they show up on more platforms, grow their audience, and then the website becomes this thing that they'll just kind of get to someday. But that's backwards, and here's why. Your personal brand is not your logo. It's not your follower count. It isn't even you. It's what people think and feel and say about you when you're not in the room. And that impression doesn't just happen on its own. It needs a home. One place that you actually own, where that impression gets shaped on purpose, and then everything else that you post online points back to it. The socials are rented land, but your website is something that you own, so it should not be the last place that you build when your brand takes off. It's the first thing that builds the brand in the first place. So I went deep on the ones that get this right, the sites that make you feel like you already know the person before you've even scrolled, and they all really come down to the same 5 things. In this video, I will break down all 5 and exactly what makes each one work, so by the end, you can look at your own site and know exactly where the gap is and what is creating it. The first thing, and the one that people feel before they read a single word, is that your website needs to look like you. And I mean that literally. People form a first impression of a website in about 50 milliseconds, which is way faster than they can read a single word. So the look is doing its job before your writing ever gets a chance. But here's the part that people miss about this. It's not enough just to look clean or professional. It has to look like a person. It has to exude your personality, because that's the only thing that is going to make the right visitor really react to you. When a site clearly belongs to someone, the right person recognizes they're kind of human and really leans into that. And the wrong person is going to feel that it's not for them and they're going to move on, which is exactly what you want them to do. A site that looks like a generic template gives no one anything to react to. It just kind of washes over them. So how do the best sites pull that off? They give the design a point of view. When I study them, the one thing they all share is that the design feels like it belongs to one specific human being, not a template, a real person. Look at Tanya Lee's site, The School of Self-Image. The whole design has this exuberant, elevated, almost like French feminine feel, and that is exactly who Tanya is. You land on it and you get this immediate feeling about her before you have even read a word on the page. You might compare that to Cara Gazy. She's a business coach. She has a totally different energy, uses bold geometric shapes. It's confident, it's modern, it's also unmistakably her. Neither of these looks like a template, and that really is the point. The mistake that most people make is they pick a nice looking template, they drop their content in, and then they end up with a site that could almost belong to anyone. It's clean, it's fine, but the feel of it says nothing about who they are. I have a client, Erica J., who is a Emmy-winning voice actor. She has voice campaigns for companies like Delta and McDonald's and Amazon. And what she told me in her own words is that she was low-key ashamed of her own website. She had been sitting on a redesign that needed to happen for years. Her old site looked fine. It was a website, but honestly, it just kind of looked like every other voiceover website. So when we rebuilt it, we took a much more intentional approach. Even tiny choices were really poured over. It feels revitalized, luxurious, kind of like an editorial magazine spread, even down to her favicon, which is like that little icon in your browser tab. It's a diamond with sound waves going through it because we deliberately wanted to avoid the like cliche microphone that's on every other voiceover website. The whole thing finally felt like her and not just like her category. Then there's what your colors and type are saying. People treat font and color as kind of like decoration, pick your favorite one. They're really not. They are communicating something the instant that the page loads. Mel Robbins is actually a really great example of this. Her site uses yellow on the buttons, which of course is the thing that you most want to draw the eye to, you want people to click. And that is got to be very intentional because yellow reads as happiness, energy, optimism, which is exactly what her whole brand is built on. That's a strategic choice about the emotion that she wants you to associate with taking action. And fonts carry the entire tone of your brand. Take the exact same words and put them in two different fonts, and you get two very different feelings. Something rounded and soft like Poppins is going to feel very warm and friendly and approachable and casual, versus something that's more bold and high impact like Libre, Caslon Condensed, or Fiala One. It's going to feel more elevated and high end and maybe a little more aggressive. Same sentence, but a very different person that it's going to speak to. So the best sites don't just grab whatever color and font looks nice. They pick the colors and the type on purpose to match the way that they want the visitor to feel the second that they land. Now, your colors and fonts set the mood, but there is one more visual piece that does even more work on your personal brand, and it's often the one that people hide from. That piece is showing your face, and I really don't want you to underestimate this. On a personal brand, you are the brand. So the photos of you are doing enormous work. The sites that nail this, they don't just use stock photos and they don't hide the person. They show warm, real, professionally taken photos that make you feel like you have already met the person. Joey Mascio, who coaches teens, has this vibrant, really relatable photography all over his site, including real event photos. You immediately get this sense of who he is and that, he can really speak to kids and they like him. That sense that you already know and trust someone before you've even spoken to them really is the entire goal of your personal brand. Your website is where you build it on purpose, with the design, the colors, the photos, all of it pointing to the same person. But looking like you is definitely not the same as proving that you are the real deal, which brings us to the second thing. It has to prove your authority in seconds. When someone lands on your page, they decide whether or not to trust you in about 3 seconds, before they've read your story, before they've watched anything. So the best personal brand sites kind of front load that proof. They make you look credible very quickly. So your website needs to show that proof. The experts who get this right make sure their most impressive, recognizable proof is right there on the homepage where your visitor cannot miss it. Let's look at Tanya Lee's site again. As you move down her homepage, you hit her media features, names like Oprah and Forbes, and your brain goes, okay, yeah, this person is super legit. It's not tucked away 3 clicks deep on some about page that nobody visits. It's right there on the front page doing its job. This was also a huge piece of Erica J's rebuild. She has incredible proof, and almost none of it was working very hard for her before. So we wove it in very intentionally, her awards, the big name brands that she's worked with, photos of her with people like Amy Porterfield and Donald Miller, with politicians that she's done voiceover for in the services that, kind of relate to those areas. The goal was that within 3 seconds of landing on any of these pages, you understand that you are dealing with someone that is at the top of her fields. And that is authority that's doing its job before she has said a single word about herself. And I want to name a mistake here because it's so common with really accomplished people. They're often very humble. They feel weird about putting their awards and their big clients front and center, so they bury it on their about page that no one is really going to scroll through. If that is you, then you need to hear this. It's not about bragging, it's about orienting. You are helping the right person feel like they are in good hands. Showing your proof does not make you full of yourself, but hiding it does kind of tend to make you forgettable. Another thing that adds authority to your website is having a signature framework. The best personal brands give their approach a name, a piece of intellectual property that's theirs, and they put it right up front. It instantly tells people what you do, and it signals that there is a real method behind it. Sometimes that framework can take the form of a book. Heather Fraser, who is a parenting coach, really leads with her book, and David Allen's whole site is built around getting things done, his signature methodology. But you do not need a book for this. I have a client, Michelle Demetrio, whose whole approach is built around a framework that she calls the inside work. We put that name right in her hero section in the subtext under her headline, so that the moment someone lands, they can understand who she is, what makes her different. A book, a methodology, the name of your signature process, it's all the same move, which is just to give your work a name, and then you really lead with it. The best personal brand sites also make the social proof a centerpiece. Testimonials are really obvious to include on a website, but most people use them kind of lazily, like, one polished line that's really buried at the bottom of the page. I find that the best sites treat social proof as a real feature. Megan Milne is a really great example of this. She built a brand called Nutrinize around a supplement that people take alongside prednisone, and her product pages are stacked with real customer reviews, named people sharing exactly how this product helped them. It's not just one tidy quote, but review after review of proof, so that by the time you're deciding whether to buy, you've already read through dozens of people just like you saying that it actually worked for them. The social proof is really doing a lot of the selling for her. And actually, if you're sitting here thinking, okay, my site might be undercutting my efforts to build my personal brand, I have something that might help. It's called the Website Blueprint, which is a free 5-part video series that walks you through the pages that every personal brand website needs and what goes on each one, so that you're not just staring at a blank page guessing what to write. I'll put the link in the description if you want it. Okay, back to it though. The third thing the best personal brand sites do is that they tell your story and they make you the guide. I'm a certified StoryBrand guide, and this idea is really underneath everything that I build. So stay with me because it's one of the most important points that I'm going to make in this video. On most average personal brand websites, the person makes themselves the hero of the story. The whole page is just about how great they are, and honestly, the whole thing ends up being kind of a turnoff. But the best sites do the opposite. They make the visitor the hero, and they position the expert as the guide who helps that hero to win. So you, as the personal brand, are not Luke Skywalker, you are Yoda. Your client is the hero, and they are looking for a guide who understands their problem and has a plan to help them to solve it. The way that you signal that you are the guide is you open by showing that you understand the visitor's problem better than they could even say it themselves. David Allen's site is a good, clean example of how this structure works. He's got a clear headline, a line of supporting text, and a button, headline, subtext, button. That simple formula where the headline names what the visitor wants and not your credentials is the single highest leverage thing that you can do on your website. The opposite of this is the headline that says certified coach with 15 years of experience. Nobody who just landed on your site cares about that yet. They care whether you understand what they are dealing with. So show them that you understand their problem first, and then they will happily read your credentials a little later. This also shapes the tone of your calls to action. The best personal brand sites that I've seen really invite people in rather than pressuring them to do something. I think that Cara Gacy's site does this really beautifully. The language is welcoming. The calls to action are low pressure, but still assertive. It makes you feel like it's safe to take the next step. That warmth is really a brand decision, and it's the right one for most brands. It's also the opposite of that hard, really salesy energy that makes accomplished people kind of cringe at the thought of marketing themselves. And this is also part of why my process starts with messaging before we ever touch anything with the design. With Erica, before we touched a single color, we did what I call success planning, which is 3 one-to-one workshops where we got crystal clear on her story, exactly who she wants to work with, and what makes her different. One of the things that she said during that success planning process really stuck with me. She told me that most voice actors are not business people first, and she is. That differentiator then really became the spine of her whole site. Out of those workshops, she did not just get a website, she got a document with the exact language that her ideal client uses to describe what they need, language that she can really use in every email, every pitch, everywhere that she's talking about her brand. The website was just the first place that we put it to work. Because if you don't have your story and your message really nailed down, there really is nothing for your design to hold up. It's just, you're just kind of decorating an empty house. The fourth thing about a great personal brand website is that it is built to get found and to convert. Here's where I see a lot of the most talented people leaving a lot on the table. They think of their website as a brochure, a thing that sits there that looks nice, but the best personal brand sites are built to do a job. They are built to get found and then turn the right visitor into a client, into a customer. That starts with really owning your site. Some personal brands are running on a platform that they don't really control with a structure that was never really built to convert in the first place. This was Erica exactly. Her old site was on Squarespace. And as she put it, there were things that she knew in her head that she wanted to do that she could not figure out how to build there. So we moved her to WordPress on really solid hosting so that she now owns her site. She has total control of how it's structured and how it shows up on search. Then we built it to actually do its job, which for a voice actor, the first thing that a visitor wants to do is hear your voice. So we put demo players right on the service pages, right at the very top, that are specific to what that service is. The site stopped being a brochure and started being a tool that books work for her. These sites also run a content engine. The personal brands that really dominate search the most, including AI search, almost all have a content engine, and they make it easy to find that content and consume it. Remit Sethi's site has this enormous library of free articles, podcast content, and honestly, it's a big reason why he shows up everywhere. The Life Coach School publishes full transcripts of every podcast episode. That content really does double duty. It builds trust with humans and it makes you more findable. And this matters more now than ever. I just went to a conference on how people get found on AI search. And the stat that stuck with me the most while I was there is this. Roughly a third of what AI says about you comes from your own website. So posting on the socials still definitely matters, but your own stuff has to come first because it really is the source that the rest points back to. And these sites, they are flawless on every device. This sounds kind of technical, but it's really about respect and it's about polish and it's about being user-friendly. The best personal brand sites work flawlessly on a phone and they are genuinely accessible to all visitors. Marie Forleo's site, for example, is built so that you can navigate the whole thing with a keyboard, with a clean, logical structure. Tony Robbins' site adapts smoothly to any device. When a site works well everywhere, it reads as quality. When it's broken on mobile or it's hard to use, it just sort of tells people that you don't really sweat the details, even if you really do. Now, there's one last thing that ties this whole video and research process together, and it's what separates an amazing personal brand from one that's just kind of okay. And it's being consistent with who you have become. Here is what consistency really means. Every piece that we have talked about, the visuals, the proof, the story, the way that it's built, all point at the same person with the same message. Nothing contradicts anything else. Krista St. Germain is a really great example of this. Her site is modern, it's feminine, it's beautiful, it's empathetic, and crucially, it matches her actual voice and her message. The design and the words are telling the same story. You're not just getting, kind of one feeling from the photos and then another whole different feeling from the words. And here is the trap, the one that catches successful people specifically. Your brand evolves, you get better at what you do, you raise your prices, you win the award, you get all the media features, you niche down, but your website just sits there and it's just kind of frozen at where you were 5 years ago. So this gap opens up between who you are and who your site says you are. That gap is really the whole reason why my client Erica J was ashamed of her website. She had grown into this top tier, award-winning voice artist, and her site was still speaking to an earlier version of her. And that is really what this entire video is about, just closing that gap. Erica had everything, the talent, the awards, the brand name clients, the reputation. The only thing that was missing was a home base that could accurately tell that story and put it all in one place. And when we built that, here is what Erica said. She said, Jennie was able to get everything into one design that didn't sacrifice clarity and was able to tell my entire story as well as all the different types of customers that I serve. She's top-notch, her team is top-notch, and you would be a fool not to work with her. After studying the best of these personal brand sites for over 1,000 hours, this is the pattern. 5 things. It looks like you, it proves your authority in seconds, it tells your story, makes you the guide, it's built to be found and to convert, and it's consistent with who you have become. The people whose sites match their reputation are definitely not doing anything magical. They just decided to stop letting the most important asset let them down in their business. They treated their website the way that the best always do, not as the last thing that you get to once the brand was built, but the first thing that helped to really build it. So if you're watching this video and you're really feeling that gap between where you are and what your website is saying about you, you are exactly the person that I do this work for. My team and I build websites for personal brands whose sites do not yet reflect how good they are. Erica said something on our first call that I think a lot about. She said she was willing to invest in this because she knew the money that she could make back if she got it right. If you are at that point, there is a link to tell me about your project in the description. And if you want to go deeper on the messaging piece, the part where your site makes your client the hero, go watch my video on the psychology behind premium websites next. It breaks down exactly how the words you use on your site decide whether someone reaches out or just leaves.